My name is Fiona Charlesworth. I was diagnosed with ADPKD when I was 17. In the early years, after I'd been diagnosed, didn't really have too much of an impact. I went to university, I came to London, worked in London, I went to America and worked in America for 6 months. Carried on, exercised, swam, rode bikes. So early on, it didn't have too much of an effect, and I didn't really allow it to have too much of an effect. And up till very recently, very few people, especially at work, knew that I actually did have this disease and that it was, my kidneys were failing. And that was, it wasn't that I didn't want them to know, it was just that, because to me, it wasn't, I wasn't allowing it to dominate my life. I'd always hoped that I would never have to have dialysis. And 10 years ago, it never figured into my plans at all. And so I suppose about 5 years ago, when my function got to about 25% and was deteriorating quite quickly, the prospect that at some point I would need dialysis then came into the discussions. Although I was put on the transplant list in the hope that I had a preemptive transplant, which meant that I would have a transplant before I actually needed to go on dialysis. As it happened, I started peritoneal dialysis in March and had a transplant in September. After the transplant, I suppose reality hit that I no longer had to dialyse, so that was a big plus, and that the kidney was working and that it was doing what it was supposed to do. It was already starting to clean the blood. My figures were dropping, all those figures that had been really high when my kidneys weren't working. But I was, I was elated. I was, just felt that I'd got my life back. No longer tied to a machine, being able to do things, without having to worry about, infections and the cleanliness and the hand washing and everything else that came with the dialysis. The only people who are aware are the people who suffer from it. So the more awareness of ADPKD that the general public have, the more opportunities that people like myself can have a kidney transplant, either through a live donor or, as in my case, through a deceased donor, which means that my life has been turned around overnight, and it means that hopefully I've got many years now of a fuller life and being able to do a lot of the things that I've not been able to do for the last few years.